G'day team, it's Marty the OT Guy here from Nozomi Networks, back for another Friday Q&A. And this week we've got a question from a global manufacturer of heavy construction vehicles. Quite cool actually. And they're asking questions about smart polling. So let's not mess around, let's dive in. So what is smart polling? Well, in simple terms, smart polling is targeted active querying of devices in your network and environment. And if you sit and think about things like Rockwell Allen Bradley's RS Links goes out, browses the network and finds devices that it can communicate with. Siemens TIA Portal does the same, and they call it network scanning. They go out and they scan the network looking for devices. And if you use CodeSys does the same. It can go out, scan the network and look for devices. So vendors have been doing this for years, and they use protocols and communication strategies that their devices expect to see and are capable of handling. So if you were to take a whole lot of those different vendor approaches that are known to be good, they're known to work, and they're approved, and put them all in one place, you could call that smart polling, which is what we did. So Nozomi Networks have had smart polling available for sort of 6 years, a little over 6 years, and all the feedback we've had from customers, the telemetry we've seen, we've never seen a problem with it. It makes it pretty reliable. And when you start looking at why you might use smart polling, it will give you faster and more accurate results than passive alone would do. Does that mean you have to smart poll? Of course not. But if you're looking for a faster result and a more granularity and a better quality of data at the end of the process, smart polling is a really good way to go. So when would you use smart polling? Well, in most modern environments, smart polling will be fine right from day one. You should be able to go in, either manually create plans or use the smart polling's progressive mode, discovery mode, and just let it go out there and listen to your network and find out what's going on, build different strategies, and sort of self-develop or self-create the strategies that you need in your environment. Will smart polling change your risk profile? Yes with an if, no with a but, right? Anything you do on any given day on your network changes your risk profile. So if you think about it, we're using strategies, protocols, and approaches to query devices in a manner in which the device is expecting to be queried and can safely and reliably respond to. There shouldn't really be a change in risk. Nothing significant anyway. It should be a safe process. That being said, risk assessment and risk appetite is always in the eyes of the customer, in the hands of the customer. But with the reports, the responses, and the results that we've had over 6 years, it really is safe to say that you can just go out and smart poll all the things. When smart polling is enabled in your environment, you'll see the smart polling tab available near the top of the dashboard. Going into the tab, the first thing you see in the main part of the screen is the smart polling plans which have been configured for your environment. And on the right hand side we see some tabs which are plans, node points, settings and health. If we look inside a plan, such as this Ethernet IP one, we can see the nodes that have either been specified or detected depending on how you configure the plan. And within these nodes, we'll see the results of the recent smart polling execution. So if we pick this top one, we can see that this PLC, we connected on port 44818. We sent and received some identity information. And what we got back on the right-hand side shows a vendor, a device type, a product code, major and minor revisions, a serial number, and the product name. Let's take a look inside this Ethernet IP plan to see how it's configured. We click the Edit button, and we can see that the strategy is Ethernet IP. Now, if we were making our own plan, there's a whole lot of different strategies here you can choose from. So there's some very specific strategies for different manufacturers and products, and there's some generic strategies such as SNMP, SSH, and for Windows devices, WinRM and WMI. With the Ethernet IP strategy selected, the next thing we do is select a schedule. So I've got this running every 60 seconds, which is way too long, in my opinion, or sorry, way too frequent, way too often for use in a real world, but it works in the lab. And we have a query to determine what devices we want to pick. And this query is specifically, it's not ideal, it's not perfect, and I'll show you why in a second. It creates a bit of a problem, and it emphasizes why it's important to get your queries right. And once you've done that, you enter a host IP, enter a host IP, hit check connection, and the plan is then tested and comes back with the proof that the plan has worked. So looking at that query that was in the plan, we asked for all nodes which had an IP address that included 192.168.50.6. And you can see we've got back 60, 61, 62, and 63. And if there was 64 through 69 in the network, we would get that as well, or if there was just a .6 on its own. And I said there was a problem with that query, and here's why. .61 is an Ethernet IP device, and so is .60. They're both Allen Bradley PLCs, or Rockwell PLCs. .62 is also an Allen Bradley PLC, but it's a different product. It's a 440C safety relay. But .63 is not an Ethernet IP device at all. It's a MOXA switch. And MOXA switches typically, or the model that I have, does not respond to Ethernet IP. So you do need to take care when you're setting up your plans and how you craft the queries that will be executed in your smart polling plans. Looking at some of the others here, let's look at an S7 poll. So the S7 poll, you can see it's come back with most of the information, but not all of it. And the S7 strategy is designed for the whole S7 family, which may include small, low-end devices like I have in my lab, that doesn't respond to these, or has no response to these particular parts of the query. My Cisco switch, I've used an SNMP strategy for this. And you can see here that it's opened the session, got back a bunch of information, and over here you can see the information, and in a few cases you can see the OIDs. The cool thing about using an SNMP strategy is you can import MIB files and specify the OIDs that are to be queried. This is just a generic, out-of-the-box, vanilla SNMP smart polling query. And you can see the information that we've pulled back. We've got details about every port on the switch. We've got some uptime there at the very bottom, and at the top we've got some information about the host name and domain and the version of firmware that the switch is running. Using SSH to access my SCADA PC, again, same thing. You can see that it starts this time though with saying fetching credentials. So to use SSH, we have to create some credential records within the Guardian. After that, it goes, smart polling goes out and runs its query, and you can see it's kind of similar to everything else. You come back with a variety of different information. But yeah, it's quite cool. We've got operating system, we've got memory, you can see the state of the processors, different things like that, and some information about disks. And I'm using an SNMP session to query my Fortinet firewall. And you can see what's come back here as well. There's an OID there, and there's some information about the interfaces that are configured on the firewall. All of these plans are configured using pretty much the default settings. I haven't really done anything special or specific to these particular devices, or these particular plans, I should say. Looking at the node points page, really what we're seeing here is the node points, or the nodes that have been picked up during smart polling. So from each query where you say go out and look at this device or the devices in this range, these are the results we get back. And it's very similar. It's just presented slightly differently from on the previous page. In the settings page, you see we can enable or disable smart polling progressive mode, and we'll come back to that shortly. And finally, we see the health tab. And the health tab here shows when the different smart polling strategies and plans are being executed. You can see the status and you can see the threads during the execution. There we go. We can see the Ethernet IP thread executing now. We can see the details. We see the threads execute and we see it complete. Now I said earlier that we'd come back and take a look at smart polling progressive mode. So what I've done is restored a backup into my Guardian here, and you can see there's no smart polling plans enabled. So if we go through to settings, and you can see smart polling progressive mode is disabled. We're going to enable it. So we click the enable box and we need to select some strategies. You could just hit the all button and try everything in your network, but I know that I have Ethernet IP. I know that I have FortiGate. I know that I have Siemens. I know that there might be one or two Modbus out there that are switched on at the moment. I know I have SNMP. I know I have SSH. And we can add WinRM. And once that's done, we click the Save button. And what will happen when we click this button is progressive mode will look at the nodes and links that have been detected through passive network monitoring, and it will build plans based on the communication between those nodes and links. So we hit save. Job done. And we'll go and take a look at the plans. So you can see that we've developed a number of plans here, have appeared, they've built out. And these plans will execute all in good time. And if we expand the Ethernet IP plan, we see one of the familiar nodes from previously, 50.60. We see a broadcast in there. We see 50.36, which is a SCADA node. And you'd expect a PLC at 50.60 to talk to the SCADA node at 50.36. That makes sense. Some of the other nodes that are in there make sense also in my network because they're things like my laptop or my workstation here communicating to the PLC using Ethernet IP protocol, although the device is not an Ethernet IP device. We can go in and say, hey, we can exclude this node later in the piece and say, no, we don't want that node included. So we'll cut across now, take a look at the health page. We can see over here that the various or some of the smart polling plans are in progress. So we've got on thread 0, we're running the progressive Modbus poll is happening. And then on thread 3, we have the progressive Siemens S7 poll is happening. So I'd expect to see at the end of the Siemens S7 poll, I'd expect to see one more node turning up in the plan, being 50.70, the Siemens PLC itself. The thread 0, I'm not sure what we'll find on the Modbus because currently I don't think any of my Modbus PLCs are turned on. We can see in the step 7 plan here that at the very bottom, .50.70, which is the PLC, has come back, it's returned back with the exact same information that we saw through the manual plan earlier. The Ethernet IP plan has come back with a number of nodes, and on the second page we see the remainder of the ones that we were missing, 61 and 62. So what smart polling progressive mode gives us is a really easy way to build out plans quickly, simply, and then go and execute queries against devices that are in the network and have already been observed behaving in a way that the plan should respond to. So the next thing I want to take a look at here is the queries, or are the queries that are available within smart polling. So it can start as simple as just looking at the node points table, which includes all the results from every smart polling execution. There's a lot of information in here. So there's a lot of ways you can slice and dice this data and come back with information that's useful within your environment. So here I've run a query where I've taken that node points table and then specified one of my Micrologix 1100 PLCs at the .50.60 address, and we can see the information that it's pulling back. And it's the same information that was displayed in the smart polling page. But as I said, of course, here as a query, you have the ability now to take that information, join it to other tables, and extrapolate further data and extend it into reporting. So looking here, for instance, this, as I say, this is a Rockwell PLC. If we change the node and look at what comes back from the Siemens PLC, it's different sorts of information. Or we change it again and look at what's coming back from the Fortinet firewall. Yeah, there's lots of different information depending on how you slice up the plans. Let's take a look at some assets and how smart polling improves assets. Taking a look here again at my Siemens S7 PLC, we can go in here. We see these little eye icons, and the eye icon tells you where the information has come from. So in this case, where the product name is set as Somatic S7 1200, when I hover over the eye, we can see that it's coming from asset intelligence with complete granularity and high confidence. So asset intelligence is looking at the behavior of this device on the network and determining that it is a Siemens S7 PLC. If we look at the firmware version, on the other hand, that information is not always shown across the network in passive traffic analysis. In this case, we've had to get it through smart polling. But again, it's complete granularity and high confidence because we know that information was coming back through our smart polling plan. So where do we go from here? Well, we've established that smart polling can be deployed safely into any environment. We have over 6 years of customer deployments, data and telemetry that we've received, and never seen a problem. So this is a good thing. Your first step should be a risk assessment because that's a wise move anyway. And depending on what kind of industry you're in and what kind of environment you're deploying into, the outcome of that risk assessment will help guide you on the best way to move forward with smart polling. So you need to plan your approach. You need to know the network that you're looking to do the smart poll on. Obviously, it's a very different environment when you're looking at oil and gas as opposed to looking at IoT devices or building management devices in a commercial office space or commercial property. You need to understand what's acceptable and what's out of bounds. Things like maybe a network segment that contains safety instrumented controllers. That's probably out of bounds. And it may not be out of bounds for a technical reason. It might simply be out of bounds because that's the policies you work under, or production and health and safety requirements say that you can't or you shouldn't do that in that environment, and that's fine. There'll be other parts of your environment where this will be acceptable. So understand your current risk position, and then calculate or estimate what your expected risk position will be with smart polling enabled. And that might involve looking at network traffic. Take a look and see what vendor traffic is on the network already. You'll probably find the vendors are using the same strategies to poll their equipment or scan their equipment already. And if that traffic's already there, then you're really only introducing a little bit more of it. So there may not be such a big change in risk, or maybe not as much as you may expect. So take a look at those things and understand what that change could look like, what that the difference in risk position will be, and ask the question, does it fit into your risk appetite? Does it fit your risk tolerance? If you reach this point and you're still unsure, reach out to us. We can have professional services engineers or other technical engineers assist you to, whether it's in demonstrations or lab setups, just to help you get your head around and get comfortable with what smart polling, the benefits smart polling can bring, and how small the risks can be. When you reach that point where you're ready to push the button, know your targets. You need to know, are you going to deploy manually created plans and strategies, or are you happy to enable progressive smart polling and let it create the plans and strategies? Your risk assessment will help you determine which of these two approaches is best to take. And again, if you still have doubts at this point, start small. Go to the spares cupboard and grab a handful of devices and set them up in the lab and smart poll them until you're happy. And again, if you need help, ask us. We'll come and help you with that. Once you do those initial trials or those initial tests, review the results. Compare the results that smart polling has given versus what you expected in your risk assessment. And look at the difference in the quality of data you've got. I think you'll be happy with the difference in the quality of data that you see about your assets. You'd be surprised, maybe not surprised, definitely happy. But the whole process is one big OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. Look at what you're doing, understand it, decide what's next, and then take an action. And just keep slowly refining it over time. And I think if you follow this plan, you'll find that it really is okay to actually go out there and smart poll all the things. All right, so I hope you found that interesting. That's an introduction to smart polling, and to the customers that asked the question, may you continue to build really big rolly on the road things. It's very cool what you do. I hope that helps. We'll see you for the next question.